welcome back to the Creative Spoonie YouTube channel. This will be a space that when the weather is cold or snowing outside over the winter, that kind of thing, I'm going to be recording in here, doing different projects. I found this company, everwildfarms.com, through Amazon. The only thing on there is, even though the pricing of the seeds was pretty reasonable, you had to pay shipping per package. Their website is definitely more affordable. They offered shipping if you spent $50 or more, which obviously I did. They come in these Mylar packs that even if you open them and zip them closed, they're gonna last years and years. I've had paper seed packets that have lasted for 5+ years and they still grew fine. They might germinate a little bit slower, but the old me used to throw seed packets away at the end of each season, which that bothers me now because I like to hoard seeds and it's a resource. I'm obviously not going to get to planting all of these varieties this year, but I'm trying to introduce a lot more perennials, more natives. We have a lot of wildlife here. We're in an urban environment, but we see rabbits, raccoons, groundhogs, different types of rodents like chipmunks, squirrels, even some different types of mice. It shows that your ecosystem is healthy. We have hawks, different birds of prey. I'm sure we have snakes, even though I've only seen the occasional gardener snake. We just love seeing all the different wildlife. I get really giddy every time I see a new species of something in the yard. Kids are less and less interested in my excitement of what I see. They used to come, look out the window or, what did you see? What did you see? Not anymore. They're grown, so they're less interested. But the husband still enjoys that. I get really excited about what comes in the yard. All different kinds of birds. I am trying as well to introduce some shrubs that will attract wildlife. I do start seeds in the house. I do a lot of winter sowing. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different winter sowing project this year that I started last year, and it actually worked out really good, so I'm sorry that I didn't film it. But I will get all of that on film this year. It's a little different than what other people are doing. So I tested it out last year. It worked pretty well. I'm going to do it again and share it with all of you. So stay tuned for that. Let's get into the seed haul. Royal Carpet Sweet Alyssum. This one is an annual, but it does self-seed. And I like these packets. They show sow outside in spring, how deep, what sun environment, and a lot of these I notice I have looked them up separately because I like to research what I'm planting. A lot of them will say full sun, but if you look them up, it'll say full to part sun, so you can try them on different areas, which I'm going to be pushing that a little bit because there's quite a bit of shade now. So I don't know if I look familiar to you, but we were an Extreme Makeover Home Edition family. It's been just under 16 years since they moved that bus. Our show aired January of 2008. It was a 2-hour episode. There's not many episodes that are 2 hours, but ours was one of them. Our episode hasn't been re-aired that I know of since HGTV took over all of the Extreme Makeover things, but it was replayed a lot before that. We still would occasionally get people driving by to check out the house. The yard was beautiful when we first moved in, but a lot of things were planted so they looked good on the show. Things were planted too close together or not in the ideal area. We had sod that, because it was late October, didn't really take very well. It's a little late for this area to be growing grass. We tried to keep it up, but my husband's actually going to put in a whole new lawn. We're going to try from seed and see how that works out. I've seen other gardeners have great success with that. We're putting in a lot of new garden beds. I do a lot of raised bed gardening. That's just easier for me now with limitations. We've actually owned the property since the end of 1999. And I don't know if you've seen the story, but our house flooded. But this house, like I said, almost 16 years in here, and we haven't really changed anything. Obviously, we have a few things we have to do maintenance on. But other than that, the house has held up great. Yeah, we're looking at changing a few things. And I'll share some of that. I'm not going to share everything about in the house right now because obviously the rest of the family doesn't want to be a YouTuber. So that's going to be a little hard navigating that, but I'll do some before and afters and those sorts of things. And if somebody wants to be on video, they can, but I wouldn't really expect that, even though they're all very handsome and it's just not their thing. So, but they're fine. They're supporting that I want to do it. So anyway, the Royal Carpet Sweet Alyssum. The ground cover, very pretty. And like I said, it's not a sponsored video. Roman chamomile. It's a perennial herb used as a ground cover. Chamomile lawns still exist at Buckingham Palace. That's so cool. The small daisy-like flowers give off a sweet, fruity fragrance, and the greenery grows in a dense mat. Once established, this hardy plant will come back for years to come. Yeah, they actually give a lot of information. Anise. I've never grown this one, but I love the smell of licorice. I know anise is used in a lot of things that have that kind of flavor. Anything that is edible for the most part, which chamomile you can put in your tea, doesn't have it, but a lot of their packets will have the harvest basket showing that it is an edible. So outside, late spring, up to 24 inches tall. This graceful feathery annual was cultivated by the Egyptians in 1500 BC. See what I mean? That's cool information that a lot of seed companies won't give you. The seeds can be used whole or crushed in baked goods, pies, applesauce, or cream cheese. Toss the flower or leaf into fruit salads or use as garnish. Doesn't take well transplanting, which is also a helpful fact. Knowing that something is not going to transplant well from growing it inside, why would you take the time to grow it inside if it's not going to do well when you put it out? So helpful tips. Purple meadow rue. Hummingbirds and pollinators love it. Named for its lovely purple stems, this tall plant often grows in moist woodlands. It will also grow in average garden soil with full sowing. It's native perennial, bears airy clusters of white flowers, which are often abuzz with various insects. Best if planted outside in fall or very early spring. So this is a perennial, and that would be a good candidate. Winter sowing jugs, or in that method that I spoke about, which I'm gonna do and show everybody. Much easier than the jugs, by the way. I'll still do jugs. I'm a fan of winter sowing, so to my husband's aggravation, I have jugs lining all down by the garage in the winter, and I mean, they're a little bit of an eyesore, but who's going back there when it comes a couple feet of snow out there? It's a great method. It's an easy method. It's a little bit of work to get them prepped, but then you plant them and you pop them outside and you really ignore them. The snow, the rain, whatever waters them for you. Unless you live in a dry climate, you don't really have any work at all. I know Laura on Garden Answer, it's a little bit more work for her because they're very dry. So she has to water hers occasionally. I think I've watered mine once in the 4 years that I've been doing winter sowing. If you're not familiar with that, stay tuned. I will have a lot on winter sowing and starting season in the house, because that gets me through the winter. Especially my pain is always worse in the cold winter. The planting and the potential of my garden for the upcoming season really helps me out. So perennial, fall sow, or 8 weeks wet and cold, which is, if you go on their website, it talks about wet sand. So I've never tried that. Golden aster. Sow outside in spring, up to 18 inches tall, perennial. This hardy native gives off a spicy sage aroma. That sounds lovely. Blooming all summer long. These bright yellow flowers contrast with the silvery green foliage. Prefers dry soil, self-sows readily, and attracts butterflies. Silver Princess Shasta Daisy. This one gets up to 16 inches tall. It is a perennial. Sow outside in spring. So even though this one says sow outside in spring, it would still be a good candidate for winter sowing because it is a perennial. Pretty much anything perennial you can winter sow. If blooming decreases mid-season, cut the plant back. I'm really bad about cutting things back, but it really will boost another rebloom. It all depends how I'm feeling. If I feel like walking around and deadheading and cutting everything back, sometimes I'm really good at it. So purple bergamot, also known as bee balm, perennial, says sow outside in spring. A lot of them won't bloom until the second year, but with winter sowing, sometimes you get blooms the first year. They're deer resistant. These will spread if they like the conditions, so just be aware of that. Put them in a spot where you have a little bit more room, or you don't mind if that happens. It's fun. Common ironweed, fall sow, or 8 weeks cold and wet, 60 inches tall, and hummingbirds love this as well. Purple prairie clover. There's that prairie name in a lot of these. Perennial, perfect for attracting native pollinators. Sweet black-eyed Susan. This one gets up to 50 inches tall, so not your average black-eyed Susan. I'm trying to do a tall area for an upper story garden view. In addition to the classic brown and yellow colors, this variety also carries a sweet scent. I don't really like a lot of the darker, warmer colors like the yellows, the oranges, the reds, but I'm trying to add them in. So hummingbirds actually like any type of cone top flower. Marshmallow. Those are really pretty, whimsical. Whether used as a flower or for candy making, or medicine, or as a veggie, this versatile plant is worth a try. Light pink flowers and should be grown in wet soil conditions. Another mallow, Kankakee mallow, I don't know if I'm doing that name justice, but known as one of the rarest wildflowers in America. This species has not been found anywhere else in the world. A rare flower that's easy to grow, how about that? Swamp rose mallow. We have a trend going here. So this one's actually in the hibiscus family, which I love hibiscus, and so do hummingbirds. Although tropical in appearance, these stunning white and crimson flowers can thrive in cooler climates. They really like wet areas in the wild, but can also be grown in a well-watered garden. That's one thing about this company. They seem to have a lot of seeds that I didn't see anywhere else. My goal is to get a nice piece of land with a smaller house when all the kids are out of the house. So some of these would still be viable by the time we did that, I'm sure. And some of these work great on a big property. You can dream, right? Meadow Blazing Star. This is a Liatris. Bursting with brilliant fuchsia stars, this perennial is the granddad of the Liatris family. This native is never lonely. It always has winged creatures like butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds over it. Anything that says that, I want in my garden. So I do have a few Liatris, but they're a smaller, straight variety, and it took a long time to grow from seed. Hopefully these ones don't take that long, but perennial, up to 60 inches tall, so those will stand out in bed. Wild Sweet William. Worthy of Prince Charming himself, a bouquet of these sweetly scented blossoms will win any girl's heart. Isn't that sweet? The hummingbirds especially love the narrow, deep throats of these fragrant flowers. Again, anything that's a hummingbird attractant, I want it in my garden. Azure Blue Sage, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Type of salvia, gets a 48 inches tall. Reflecting the clear blue sky, these lovely blossoms illuminate the prairie landscape of the southern plains. This perennial needs a lot of heat to complete its life cycle. Blooms late in northern regions. Be a perfect one for the curb bed. Lots of heat out there, lots of full sun all day. Fire Pink Perennial. Native perennial is fond of shady areas. Hairy Mountain Mint. Hummingbirds also like this one. 36 inches tall, perennial. These native mint plants feature white flowers on top of hairy gray foliage. Honeybees love this minty perennial so much that they sometimes sleep on the blossoms. I don't know about you, but I love when I find a sleeping bee in my garden. It's so cool that they chose to, take a nap on my flowers. I am a pollinator nerd, if I haven't said that before. Bloodroot, one of the first to emerge in the spring. This wildflower has been prized for many medicinal uses as well. The large leaf foliage also makes an attractive woodland ground cover. Best if planted outside in fall for germination the second spring thereafter. Those take a while, but so interesting. Wild geranium. These do spread over time from what I've seen by other gardeners, self-seeds easily, which some people don't like, but I like that. It's less work for me to fill in an area and also less weeding, because weeding is hard, especially when you have spine problems. I still love to garden even though I do have a lot of issues. Generally, if you are a spoonie like me or you have a chronic condition, not really where your limit is. We always have that fine line that we pass without knowing and then we pay for it later. But you come to learn what you're going to pay for more and what you're not going to pay for more. Luckily, I have a lot of help, so I don't have to do a lot of the heavy stuff, but I still enjoy being out to garden. The best recommendation I can do for anybody living in pain or with chronic illnesses, things that keep you down, find something you like to do, even if you get to do it for 5 or 10 minutes, a couple times a week. That's gonna make your week go by and be a lot happier. My little 2 cents. I sat for a long time in my own misery, basically, not just being kind of depressed at where I was at and missing the old me, but that doesn't help anybody, especially yourself. So find something you like to do, even if it's something that doesn't really require you moving very much, although I do recommend moving, especially with any severe type of arthritis. The more you're able to move, the less stiff you feel, the less heavy you feel. Enough about all that. White prairie clover. So this one is the same thing as the purple one I showed earlier, but it's white. Somebody posted a comment on this seed website, and I can't remember what variety of flower it was. Maybe daisies, but they said to intermingle a couple of different, 2 or 3 different varieties of the same type of flower family, and that sounds really interesting to me. So I'm gonna try that with a few different things. It'll be a beautiful display. So definitely with the clovers, the white and the purple, I'm gonna mix them together. Deptford Pink. This is another one. There was another dianthus that we did. I don't know where it is now. That would be a good example. Another type of dianthus, different height variety. This one's an annual. I think the other one might have been perennial. Either way, and it does say volunteer seedlings. So yeah, I might try and intermingle some of these similar, same family, similar variety. Also, if I appear stiff to you, I am. I'm limited. I can move my head side to side pretty freely now. I had a huge neck surgery. I don't know if you can even see it with this lighting, but It's very well faded now. It was in January 2015. So it's been quite a while now. My neck is held up. It kept me from being paralyzed, but this is all I have for upward motion. So if I want to see something in the sky, I have to bend my back way back, which is not comfortable. But I try not to move my head too much. I can somewhat freely move it side to side now. The muscles have loosened up. They were very tight before and after my surgery. But if I move to the left and down a little bit at an angle, something gets jammed in here and it's very painful. It's a lot of hardware in there. They didn't even think I'd be able to swallow normally after the surgery, which obviously is not a concern if you're afraid you won't be walking. Luckily, I can eat pretty normally. Sometimes I have a little bit of a difficulty swallowing. I have very narrow space in there, so I have to wear a medical IV bracelet because I am very difficult to intubate. My last surgery, which is on my low back, they actually had to intubate me while I was awake. I would not recommend an awake intubation. It was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had. And they tried to give me extra of that forget medicine, and it didn't work. I remember the whole thing, gagging the whole time. So, but they were afraid to put me under, not be able to get a tube in easily, and that's dangerous. So I was awake when they did it, and now they know they need to use a fiber optic scope. So the anesthesiologist recommended that I wear a medical alert bracelet so that if ever needed, the ambulance wouldn't waste time trying to intubate me on the scene. They would just get me to the hospital. Back on the neck movement. If I move to the right, my vertigo is so bad that I probably sway in my seat. If I try to turn, I'll turn my body. It might look weird. If you see me out in the garden walking, I do walk a little bit off sometimes. Some days are better than others. But I have foot drop from my neck spinal cord injury being so severe. It's not as bad as it was. I'm not tripping over my feet, but my foot still drags. If anybody has any questions about any of that, or you're going through something similar and have questions, I can be knowledgeable on those sorts of things. But back to the seed hull. Hoary skullcap. Discovered by ancient herbalists, this native perennial is highly valued for its medicinal benefit. This wildflower also bears clusters of pretty little purple flowers that are continually visited by various types of bees. Purple moon shadow. This one seems really interesting to me. It's an annual, goes up to 120 inches, so it's a climbing vine. I love any kind of climbing vine. You can tell the seeds are ones that you'd want to nick or soak. The annual climbing vine produces fragrant clusters of dreamy purple blossoms. This ornamental plant climbs like a morning glory, so trellises or fences. Easy to grow, requires little maintenance outside of watering, and it's so pretty. Bottle gentian, I believe that's how you pronounce it. So this one is part sun to sun, up to 18 inches tall, named for the nearly closed tubular blossoms. These unusual wildflowers look like buds about to burst open. The only way they get pollinated is that bumblebees force their way in to do their duty. Another one that's similar to that is turtlehead. They're named turtlehead because the blooms actually look like little turtle heads or beaks. I don't know if turtles have beaks, but a mouth. They look like that, and you see the bees squeeze their way in, so that reminds me, it's similar to that. Prairie onion. I am a sucker for any type of allium. Planted, known for its delicate beauty and adaptability, the prairie onion is included in many wildflower plantings. In addition, the flowers and leaves are edible and may be used in salads or as a garnish. I probably won't grow them for that. My husband is allergic to onions, so I mean, I don't really do a lot of the cooking anymore anyway. In the kitchen, the heat it just does a number on me. It makes me flare and symptoms, and luckily he likes to cook and he's a good cook, so. Even the smell of a raw onion being prepared in the kitchen can affect them, but the alliums in the yard don't, so luckily I can grow them. 16 inches tall, perennial, and they're so pretty and whimsical. A lot of people call them like Dr. Seuss flowers because they have that kind of vibe. Pearly Everlasting, and I actually just saw, I can't remember the name of her channel. That's sad. She included this in one of her favorite flowers to grow. 20 inches tall, perennial, often used in traditional dried flower arrangements. Pearly Everlasting keeps its texture and whiteness for years after it's cut. It's also a favorite of butterflies. So yeah, attracting the pollinators, and something that looks as good dried as it does fresh, that's a good thing to do. So Prairie Violet is the next one. 6 inches tall, so a ground cover perennial. A beauty to behold, this prairie princess is clad in classic violet garb. This petite wildflower forms clumps near to the ground and the blooms in the cooler season of spring and fall. So one of the things that's going to pop up early in the spring. And I did read, I looked this one up before I ordered it, and it attracts fritillaria butterflies. They go to like types of violas, and this is a type of viola. So that's interesting. Wild strawberry, and I'm going to use this as a ground cover, and it will support the little critters that we have around here. We won't eat these. I mean, we could. They are edible. Native to the United States, this plant bears tiny wild strawberries. They are flavorful and sweet, albeit seedier than the cultivated cousins. Great for the homestead garden, and they will spread. If you've ever grown strawberries before, you know they're spread by runners. Sometimes people think it's annoying, but it's free strawberries. So if you have room to plant them somewhere else, if not, give them to your friends and family. Helen Mount Johnny Jump Ups. Another viola, classic, cool spring flower. They will bloom later too. I've had these in pots and they just come back every year. It's great. That's always a bonus when that happens. English wallflower, up to 20 inches tall, biennial, so that's every other year. Usually it will grow foliage, bloom the next year, die out, but often reseed. This one says it will also reseed itself unless trimmed back. This old English favorite pops up in castle ruins, roadsides, or any bit of rocky soil near the sea. The phlox-like orange blossoms also give off a pleasant fragrance, best if planted in fall. Bunch flower. Though this native plant takes several years to reach its full growth, its unusual beauty is well worth the wait. Found in swamps and bogs, the fragrant flowers are known for being extremely attractive to bees and butterflies. Best if planted outside in fall or very early spring. So another one that takes a long time to get to its full potential, but if you wait, it's going to be beautiful. Wild hyacinth. So like the ones we fall plant, this one you grow by seed. A rare beauty, these delicate violet blue flowers emerge in the spring, just like the domesticated hyacinths. This native perennial forms a bulb, so it is easy to move or divide them when dormant. So it will form a bulb after that you can move. Cold sow, it says, or cold treatment. Flat topped aster. These were really interesting. They looked almost, they look kind of fuzzy. 48 inches tall, perennial, blossoming in the late summer. These soft white flower clusters top 4-foot stalks. In the wild, this aster grows in the moist sandy areas or woodlands. I did buy a bunch of varieties, and this is another one that I'm going to try to interplant together and see how they do. So I have aromatic aster. I'm not going to go into all these. 24 inches tall. Silky aster, 10 inches tall, and prairie aster, 16 inches tall. So pale spiked lobelia, a little different than some of the lobelias that are common in gardens. A 4-inch tall perennial developing on willowy stems. Pale flowers add delicate beauty to any native planting. Attracts hummingbirds and butterflies with its tubular flowers. So it's not all about ornamentals for me. I want some interesting things. I would like to be the old garden lady that can share unique varieties with, you know, younger people that are getting excited about gardening. That's my goal, whether it's here or we end up on a farm. I would like to be able to get other young gardeners excited and give them some cool free seeds or plants for their gardens. The best part about gardening and gardeners is that we love to share our knowledge and we love to share seeds and plants that we divide. It's a great community. All blue flax, perennial, and it says, see the sky reflected in a sea of these heavenly blue blooms. The wording on these packets is so sweet. They have a scripture, just one scripture on every single package. It says, God has made everything beautiful in his time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Lewis flax and blue flax together would be a cool interplanting. So there we go. The Lewis flax, 20 inches tall perennial, grows in lovely pale blue profusion, named after the Lewis and Clark expedition. None so pretty catchfly. I have grown catchfly before, but I believe they're orange. So this is a pink variety, 18 inches tall. It says they're an annual. They will self-seed, full sun, easy germination. These eye-catching beauties bring meadows to life with brilliant fuchsia color. It is called catchfly because these little flies and gnats get stuck on the sticky seed pod behind the flower. Monkey flower. This one was very different looking. Perennial, up to 24 inches tall. This perennial grows in wetlands and marshes in the wild, but adapts pretty well to average garden soil. English daisy. Perennial, up to 6 inches tall, so a nice ground cover. I remember this one from the website. No, it's not on here, but there was a little quote that somebody said, to step on 5 daisies signals spring. But I can picture these growing in little cracks on a retaining wall or in between pavers. Short little 6-inch multicolored flowers. Budding onion. Perennial. It's another allium, of course, because I love alliums. This perennial wildflower attracts bees with its tiny pink bell-shaped blossoms that form a globe at the top of the stem. Not only are the flowers pretty, The onion flavored leaves and flowers are also edible. Snowbell, kind of hanging down, droopy flower. Alaska Shasta daisy. So the daisies that I got, there's only a couple of varieties. I got a bunch, but the daisies that I got would be good for interplanting too. 30 inches tall, 16 inches tall. Mixing them together, I thought that was such a cool idea, so I am going to try that in a few varieties. This daisy looks a lot like the oxeye daisy, but it is not as invasive. This delightful dwarf variety will bring charm all summer long. That's another thing I'm trying to do. Late season blooming. We had hummingbirds, juvenile hummingbirds, hang around until about last week, and that's the latest I've ever seen them here. So I want to have things that can support them later into the season. The bees as well. Bone set. Oh, sounds French. Perennial, 48 inches tall. The white flower clusters of this native perennial are pleasantly fragrant, making it a butterfly magnet. Wild lupine. Who doesn't love a good lupine? Some people say lupin. I don't know. I'm not big on, you know. If you pronounce it one way, fine. If I pronounce it a different way, fine. If I really am wrong, leave it in the comments. But we all say things different in different parts of the country anyway. So, perennial, 18 inches tall. This lupine is more modest than some in the family, but it is a native wildflower that will not take over your garden. The variety that I have out in the garden does spread pretty heavily. Of course, I didn't cut them back. My fault for leaving the seed pods on there, but I love them and they're easy to just scoop out, put in a pot, share with friends, put somewhere else in your property. And they are deer resistant and critter resistant. I haven't had anything nibble on them. Wild mint, 24 inches tall, perennial, says full sun, containing a valuable essential oil. The leaves of this mint have numerous culinary and medicinal uses. White to lavender flowers that always create a buzz among the honeybees. Easy germination. Pink New England Aster. This is a different variety of aster. Perennial, up to 48 inches tall, blooming in pink profusion. This vigorous variation is sure to brighten up your fall meadow. Canadian Milk Vetch. Now, if you have deer and you want to feed them, this might be an option. Keep them away from your other things. Animals will eat this one, which is fine. I plan on planting maybe a whole raised garden bed of stuff that the rabbits and the groundhogs will eat to keep them away from my other stuff. I actually was very lucky. Squirrels and chipmunks, everything we have here, nothing ate my bulbs. We had a huge bulb display this spring in our front curb bed. Hopefully a lot of that will perennialize. I don't know if I have the energy, even though the husband did most of it, to get that many bulbs in the ground this year. I can't believe it's already October. This is another prairie type plant. Huge plumes of fern-like foliage and spiky flowers set this unusual flower apart. Vigorous growth and adaptability make this plant a good choice for erosion control, which we have a little issue with that in the back hill. Pasquet flower, I think is how you said that. It's a type of anemone. 8 inches tall, perennial, so ground cover. Pasquet means passion. This native wildflower usually unfolds its lovely petals around the Easter season. Known as one of the first to blossom on the prairie, it is also called a prairie crocus. Once established, this plant can continue to grow for up to 50 years. Wow, imagine having a flower in your garden for 50 years. Common German chamomile. So I have a Roman chamomile, which I think I went over earlier, and a German. 24 inches tall. Common German chamomile produces tiny daisy-like flowers that smell like apples. It can be used for a relaxing, fine flavored tea that can be enjoyed during the winter months beside a crackling fireplace while reading a good book. I mean, that's a cool thing on a seed packet. Hyssop. The bright blue flowers of this member of the mint will add lovely color to your herb garden. The leaves can be brewed into a tea, fragrant and attractive to bees, butterflies, and birds. What more could you want? I like chives. Obviously edible. I have grown these before. This picture, they look so cute. It is a type of allium. Of course, I'm drawn to it. Vera lavender. There's not a lot of lavenders that will grow and come back in this zone. I have bought some from Lowe's that came back for a year and just started to fizzle out after that. I actually have one in the curb that I have to take out and replace it with something else. This one seems to do well in a cold area, so we're gonna try it. I might actually end up doing a lavender hedge. Add beauty and fragrance to your herb garden with this variety of English lavender. So produce a profusion of lilac flowers on silvery foliage. I love anything that is that blue, gray foliage. This one says to refrigerate or fall winter sow. Green globe artichoke. I have not been successful in growing artichokes. I tried last year. It takes a lot of heat and a long season. I might try to winter sow and start them inside just to see which does better. Can be perennial depending on where you live. It is not where I live. I think the perennials was zone 6. So if I gave it a spot up against the house where there's a lot of sun and reflective heat, maybe if I mulched it, it would come back. You could try that. But 150 days to harvest. Some people say that you grow them the first year foliage, especially in a perennial area. You grow them first year's foliage, second year is harvest. And I don't even eat artichokes personally. I want to see them bloom. Kitchen sage, type of salvia, 24 inches tall, full sun, perfect for the herb garden. These pungent gray-green leaves can add flavor to meats, stuffing, or tea. Love sage with poultry, especially. Blood flower. We're gonna go a little faster because this video is gonna be so long. How much do you want to see my face? Seriously. Annual, 24 inches tall, also known as tropical milkweed. These brilliant red and yellow blossoms explode with color in their first growing season. That's great. A lot of milkweeds won't flower until the next season. So, very cool. Annual, but as everybody knows, milkweed will reseed. Great for pollinators. Wild licorice. Perennial, 24 inches tall. With a name reminiscent of Candyland, this native wildflower produces sweet edible roots. Yellowish white flowers also attract butterflies. Wild petunia. I thought this one was very exciting. It's a perennial petunia. I mean, seriously. Self-seeding, may spread, great. This likes full sun. Might put these out in the front curb bed because I don't really have anything that grows right up against the curb, and we do get some weed trouble up there. So to have something like this attracts hummingbirds, butterflies, bees. Beautiful. Autumn sneezeweed, and don't let the name fool you. This is a more rare garden flower. I have seen a few people post about it. It doesn't really make you sneeze. If you tend to have heavy or wet soil in your garden spot, then these may be just the flower, which I have an area that they might do great. Full sun, easy like perennial, can also be grown in medium soil but needs to be well watered. They do not tolerate drought. Probably not for your dry area people. Bush's coneflower. Full sun, up to 36 inches tall, also known as the Ozark coneflower. This naturally occurring yellow variety contrasts beautifully with its dark brown center. This rare echinacea is prized around the world for its lovely characteristics. You know, to have cool, different things that is like a spin on an ordinary flower, I'm all about it. Sweet Joe Pye weed, 80 inches tall, needs a lot of space, will spread. This is gonna go in that garden I was talking about where we can really enjoy it from the upper stories. So this relative of Joe Pye weed is taller, more colorful, and more fragrant than the common Joe Pye weed. Also, it doesn't need quite as much water. Great. I might even sprinkle some of this across the street. Like I said, all the water tends to go across the street, and that's where they plow the snow. There is a wildflower meadow over there. It's kind of dwindled the past year or two, but the highway department planted it, and it's really pretty. A lot of pollinators over there. But yeah, excited about that one. This is regular Joe Pye weed. This one's only up to 60 inches tall, which is tall for an average garden. Looks great up against a fence if it gets enough light. It says full sun, but they will grow with part sun as well. They get so tall, they pretty much reach for the sun on their own. So showy native wildflower abounds in wetland areas and is so aromatic that it continually has butterflies around it. Hummingbirds also like Joe Pye. So, New Jersey tea. Once used by American colonists as a tea substitute, this slow-growing shrub bears fragrant white flower clusters. It also makes a lovely border addition to prairie plantings. 180-degree water soak. Anything that's like a round, like ball type seed, soak 'em, or sandpaper treatment. Blue grandma. This is a grass, and it's a perennial grass. This native grass is easy to grow and provides a perfect contrast for wildflower plantings. The short bush green variety grows in grassy clumps during the warm season of summer and can even be used for a shaggy, no-mow green space. Easy germination. And native grasses, birds and wildlife like to nest in them or use the grasses for their nesting material. So anything you can do to add more natives to your yard. Small yellow wild indigo. These sunny yellow flowers grow on drought-resistant shrub-like plants. Long-lived perennials are perfect for native landscaping. 24-inch tall perennial. First year, 3 years, it should be 24 inches tall. What is that thing? They say like the first year it sleeps, second year it creeps, third year it leaps. That's kind of how perennials go, an ordinary perennial. So some of these that say they take a little bit longer, it's gonna take longer than that, 3 years. Blanket flower. 24 inches tall, type of Gaillardia. Perennial. Reminiscent of an Indian blanket, this bi-colored variety comes in yellow, red, burgundy, and brown. It is a native wildflower of the northern Rockies, so it is better equipped to handle cold than its cousin Indian blanket. These easy-to-grow blooms provide color all season long. Persian carpet zinnias. I have not grown these, but I am a huge fan of zinnias. Super easy to grow, color all season, wild leek. Store in the fridge. That's cool that they tell you these little tips. If a new gardener is trying these things, perennial. Full apart sun, 8 inches. Ramps in the culinary world, leeks are considered a springtime delicacy. The mild bulbs have a sweet onion-like flavor with a hint of garlic. Creeping daisy. Annual, 10 inches tall, so creeping ground cover. These sweet little daisies are a perfect choice for rock gardens, containers, window boxes, or as a ground cover. Marsh phlox. Store in the fridge. Again, it tells you. Perennial, 24 inches tall, full sun, featuring clusters of beautiful rose-colored blooms. This scented phlox pleases the eyes and nose. This perennial native is a gem, but can take some skill to grow. Mexican sunflower. I did grow some of these this year. It's an annual. It does say it's self-seed, so maybe I'll get some back from that, but they're so pretty. Hummingbirds like them, bees, butterflies. 60 inches tall, it's full sun. This popular annual is quite tall and quite wide, almost creating a hedge. Empress Rocket Candy Tuft. 14-inch tall, full sun annual. This easy carefree annual will be blooming in almost no time flat. Fragrant white flowers add sweet aroma to the garden. Anything that smells good, I'm all there. Deep carmine baby's breath. Annual, 12 inches tall, tiny crimson flowers and feathery gray-green foliage give a delicate, airy feel. California giant zinnia. I have grown these. My favorite ones so far were the cut and come again variety. But again, any zinnia, super easy to grow. We're getting down to the bottom. Hopefully my batteries don't run out before we get there. My batteries or the technology's batteries. Old fields. 9 inches tall, this California native carpets many valleys and coastal wetlands, or attracts butterflies and goldfinches, and can be grown as an annual in most regions of the U.S. Shannon wild petunia, 12 inches tall, annual, lovely violet blossoms. The sprawling growth habit of this annual makes it ideal for hanging baskets, borders, and containers. Easy germination, good for a first-time gardener. Tall thimbleweed. Now again, 2 thimbleweed. I'm going to try to interplant these next to each other. One's 30 inches tall, one's 36 inches tall, so a little whimsical. They kind of reminded me of Gara, the way Gara look on tall stems. This tall flower develops a green thimble-shaped cone center. The unusual plant belongs to the anemone family and can thrive even in shady conditions. Hairy woodmint. Perennial, 30 inches tall, this charming variety of woodmint is also known as hairy pagoda. Plant for its unusual stacked clusters of flowers. It's a magnet for pollinators such as honeybees. Clustered poppy mallow. Perennial, 8 inches tall, fuchsia beauties, that's a mouthful. Spring from low-growing upright plants, flourishing in dry, sandy areas. American germander. Not sure if this is a variety I have, but I have some germander that I'm trying to get to form a hedge. It is evergreen. When it does bloom, mine hasn't bloomed yet, I think they're too young. But when it does bloom, it attracts butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds. Native perennial, also known as wild basil, but we don't recommend consuming it. Great information. Again, perennial up to 36 inches. Maryland senna and wild senna. This is where senna, the laxative, comes from. That's a natural base laxative. 48 inches tall, 60 inches tall. Full sun, I know they can grow in part sun as well. It's native to the eastern U.S. Also known as cassia. Perennial has a wide variety of uses. Blue vervain, 50 inches tall perennial, grow on tall stems, frequently found in moist areas. Poke milkweed, another type of milkweed. Perennial, 60 inches tall. These tall, elegant stalks can be found in woodland areas across the eastern United States and Canada. Perfect for where I live in New Hampshire. You don't have to plant all natives, but to include a lot of them is very beneficial to the ecosystem that you're creating in your yard. Gloriosa daisy. It is hard to believe that these large, beautiful flowers can be packed into little seeds. These jumbo black-eyed Susan blooms have decorative red accents near the center cone and will make your garden look picture perfect. Western shooting star. Cyclamen-like feel to your garden. Native to western U.S. and has more color than the eastern relatives. Cardinal flower. Hummingbirds love these. 48 inches tall by year 2. It has been called the reddest red in nature and flourishes in wet areas near ponds or streams. White vervain. So I have a lot of different vervain varieties. Perennial, 10 inches tall, full sun. These tiny, unassuming white flower spikes form on tall plants This perennial is easy to grow and makes a nice contrast when planted. St. John's wort is often grown for medicinal uses, but it does have pretty yellow blossoms as well. Winged loosestrife. Perennial, 30 inches tall, fall or winter sow. Though often confused with its invasive cousin, this well-mannered wildflower is actually protected and hard to find in the wild. Also another favorite of the hummingbirds. 18 inches tall, it says, ablaze with color, these crimson spikes come from the southern U.S. but can be grown as an annual in most areas. Prairie milkweed. Perennial, 36 inches tall, full sun. These fragrant rose mauve blossoms attract both hummingbirds and butterflies. Easy to grow variety. Giant yellow hyssop. This one's different. Looks a little weedy. Full sun. This one can also grow on part sun. Gigantic native wildflower, grows up to 6 feet tall and bears spikes of tightly clustered pale yellow flowers. Another St. John's wort. This one's up to 60 inches tall. Perennial. Features tall plants and large yellow flowers. Very easy to grow and often grown for medicinal purposes. Great coneflower, 72 inches tall, perennial. The first time you see one of these flowers, it makes you look again because it is almost unbelievably large. This perennial is native to the southern states, but it can be grown in gardens as far north as Minnesota. They will reseed. Birds love the seed head. Showy sunflower. Now these are perennial sunflowers, 48 inches tall. Unlike domesticated sunflowers, this native sunflower is a perennial and will come back year after year. Features bright yellow petals and dark center. Prairie coreopsis, 24 inches tall, native perennial, will brighten any garden or planting. This species takes a little more time to grow than other types of coreopsis. Wild quinine, perennial, 40 inches tall. Medicinal uses, the tall, sturdy perennial bears white flower clusters with an herby scent. Lead plant. This one I know the groundhogs and rabbits will eat. Up to 36 inches tall, very pretty. Once established, the singular prairie shrub is extremely drought tolerant and can last for generations. It develops spikes of tiny purple flowers that attract pollinators. And I know hummingbirds as well, I did look it up. Bishop's flower, it's a type of ami. Sometimes mistaken for Queen Anne's lace, this lovely annual grows neat, delicate clusters. It does reseed, and it's another one that will look as good dried as it does fresh. Purple giant hyssop. Perennial, up to 72 inches tall. This lovely tall wildflower adds beauty and color to meadows and gardens. In addition, it is a wonderful honey plant, irresistible to birds, bees, and butterflies. Yellow coneflower, up to 60 inches tall, perennial by year 2. This brilliant yellow wildflower is a classic native variety. Songbirds also love the numerous seed cones and forage on them into the cold winter months. Basket flower. These are really interesting. I haven't grown them before, but I've seen other people's. 48-inch tall annual. The basket-like base of these blossoms hold delicate petals, hence its name. Although it is a distant relative of the thistle, the colorful flowers give off a sweet honey-like scent. So easy. Marble seed. These are really interesting. Droopy, like a snowdrop, like a turned down flower. Perennial, 30 inches. Named for its round white seeds, this native wildflower is becoming rare in some states. It prefers to grow in dry soils. How cool is it to have something that is rare? You might be one of the only people in the area that grow it. Button blazing star. Perennial, 30 inches tall by year 3. This striking native takes a few years to grow from seed, but is very attractive to butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds. Maximilian sunflower. Now this is a perennial sunflower, 72 inches tall. So attracts pollinators, songbirds. Excellent choice for lovers of winged guests. Round-headed bush clover. 40 inches tall, perennial. These creamy white flowers are a nice addition to a native wildflower planting because they are a favorite of small animals and birds. White wild indigo. Fireweed, to flavor wildflower, honey, candy, ice cream, or jelly. Northern dropseed, so another type of native grass. 36-inch tall perennial grass and is quite winter hardy. Mountain phlox. Annual, 18 inches tall. These rare beauties will bring charm and sweet fragrance wherever they are planted. Makes an excellent ground cover or border plant. That's what I have for you for the seed haul. Once I get this office situated, I'm going to do a little tour of how I'm storing my craft supplies and video equipment, all that stuff. If anybody's interested in what I'm using to film, be willing to go into that as well. I didn't want to invest in anything that I didn't already have, since I don't know how this YouTube thing is going to work out. So far, I've enjoyed recording. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until I see you next time, all the best. Have a good one.